This Aston Martin is turning out to be a bit more expensive than I thought. So last time we got the Aston Martin starting under its own power and also being able to move by putting on that new wheel. So it's a little baby step in the whole grand scheme of the project, but it's definitely a move in the right direction. But unfortunately that doesn't mean that there isn't any damage underneath the car. So we found that in here we had a bent tie rod and also a snapped anti-roll bar drop link that needs fixing. And some of these parts that need replacing are turning out to be not too bad price-wise, but some are a little bit costly. Take this drop link for example. This is quite reasonably priced at about 20 quid, so that's about right for something like that. This inner tie rod on the other hand was a different story. This is the opposite end of the spectrum. This normally is not an expensive part, but on this occasion for the V8 Vantage it was £250, not including the track rod ends. So you know, that's just a bit ridiculous if you ask me, but it's a discontinued part, I think. There's only one place that really has them, so you've got to pay whatever they ask. But anyway, it's done now, so it is what it is, and if that's all it takes to get this car driving right, then it's not too bad, I don't think. So anyway, let's not waste any more time, let's get straight on with it. So the first job in this video is to get the running gear sorted on the car, so the car can drive in and out the garage freely and have no damage underneath. So the two parts that are damaged are the anti-roll bar drop link and the inner tie rod, so we need to get both of those off. To get the drop link out, we need to take out the lower bolt for the shock absorber. This will allow that to move out the way slightly and allow the drop link to come out. But that bolt was a little bit tight, so with a bit of leverage, we did get it loose. Also as well, whilst I'm doing this, I noticed that because the inner tie rod was bent, that was also going to stop that lower bolt for the shock absorber coming out too. So I did have to take that tie rod off anyway, but I had to take it off in order to change the drop link too. So then off with the clip which holds on the boot for the inner tie rod, and then I could use a wrench to take that off. Now I didn't actually have an adjustable or a spanner big enough to take the inner tie rod off, so this pipe wrench had to do the job. Once that was removed, I could then remove that bolt for the shock absorber, which then gave me access to be able to remove that anti-roll bar drop link. And you can see side by side the new one versus the old one. It should be a straight bar, not a bent one. So we'll pop the new one on, nice easy job, and then we can start reassembling everything else. Then it was back in with the lower shock bolt. With a bit of persuasion, we managed to get that wound in and then get it tightened up, and then it was on to the tie rod. We're going to reuse the boot off the old one and then just hand tighten this straight onto the car. These don't have to be insanely tight, that's why I was fine using this pipe wrench, but obviously it's not the ideal tool for the job. But anyway, once that was tightened up, I could get the boot in position, and then we can start looking at the track rod end. I do actually still need to get a clamp that holds on the inner side of the boot, but I'll sort that out at a later date. I'll come back to that one, it's not a big deal. So then on with the track rod end, and some of you will have noticed at this point that I have made a monumental mistake. If you don't know what it is, stay tuned until the end of the video and you'll see exactly what I've done, and it's a biggie. Well, it is and it isn't, but you'll see, you'll see. Well, that was a bit of a mission, I'm not going to lie, but only for one reason. So the main problem, because everything actually came off alright without too many hiccups, the only thing was the track rod end, and I'll show you why that was a problem. So here is the old one, and I managed to get the nut cracked off and, you know, get it loosened off until it got right to the end of the thread. And then obviously a little bit of rust got in the way, and the ball joint started spinning, which was an absolute mess. So what we ended up doing is using my mum and dad's weed burner. We managed to get a bit of heat into it and put the jack underneath it, and then it actually did come off, luckily, because it was trying me. It was really, really trying me, but we got there in the end. But that doesn't matter because it all went back together, an absolute treat. The only thing that I did have to do was just roughly set up the track rod end vaguely from the amount of thread showing on the old bent one. So it'll be sort of straight, but we definitely have to get it tracked as soon as we're driving it. But you can see now how badly damaged all of these parts were. The anti-roll bar drop link has a massive kink in it and has also completely obliterated one end. And then the tie rod, look at that bend, that's just ridiculous, isn't it? So now we've got the running gear on the Aston sorted. The next thing to do, I think, is take off all of these battered panels. So we need to strip it back so everything on the car is undamaged, so then we can start building it back up to a condition where it should look semi-reasonable. So let's get stripping. No, not that way. So the first panel I wanted to take off the car was the bonnet, so we had to disconnect the washer fluid hose, and then there was 2 bolts on each hinge, and then the bonnet was free from the car. So that is one panel down. Next up was to take off this front fascia on the engine bay, just to gain access then to all of the wing bolts. Next up is the grille, which is unfortunately slightly damaged, but once that was removed from the car, we could see that there was a few bolts missing. It was actually supposed to have 8 bolts holding this in, and it had a total of 1.
That one. One.
Next thing to come out was the wheel arch liners. There is, I believe, 3 Phillips head screws on the outer edges, and then a bunch of T30s holding this in place. They're actually quite easy to take off. So once the arch liner was removed from the car, we could start removing the headlight. There was 2 Allen head bolts, which are super easy to get to as soon as that arch liner was off, and then that was actually it freed from the car. It did need unplugging, and I think we needed to unplug the MAF sensor just to get a bit of extra jiggle room to get it out, but yeah, easy as that.
There's one down there.
I know it's expensive.
Don't be afraid, won't let you fall, girl.
So with the strip down going pretty well, we could get the airbox off the car and then start taking off the front bumper. Again, there was a couple of screws missing from this because of obviously the damage, but there's a few in the top of the bumper and then a few connecting the wing to the bumper itself. And again, quite an easy little job. So then on to possibly the worst part of this job, which is trying to get the wings off. I don't actually need to take the passenger side wing off, but I'm going to take it off anyway because I need to get full access to have a proper look at this headlight support bar. So there's a bunch of bolts at the top inside of the engine bay, and then loads inside the wheel arch lining, and some you can only get to from inside the door shut. So yeah, it was a lot of fiddly work. The final one to get out was just a Phillips head screw hidden underneath a door seal inside of the door shut, and it was at a completely impossible angle, so I ended up having to use like a very small ratchet with a Phillips head on it in order to get it off, but again, very, very fiddly. Then, after a bit of head scratching trying to figure out which way I needed to pull it to get it off the car, I did eventually get it free, thank God.
What an arse. That was not fun. Not one bit. Wee. Everything. Yeah. Oh, nice. Oh, we can go round the phone padding on it.
What's that?
Someone's put a fucking washer bottle in the way.
For what?
Bloody no. Looks empty, I'll tell you that.
That must be the indicator fluid.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
So turns out that mysterious bottle, I think, is actually a coolant overflow reservoir. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure on that. It's not something I've seen before, so I may well be wrong. So anyway, just the one wing left to remove, but the other one, it didn't really matter too much because it was already so damaged. I think it's just going to go straight in the bin, where this one I was trying to preserve because I've got other plans for it. So yeah, we need to get this one off without damaging it, preferably. But that's why we did it in this order, because we could practice on the damaged wing and then perfect it on the other one. So this one, again, once we knew exactly what we were doing, came off relatively easily. Just want to say thank you as well to my mate Sam, who's helping me out here, because taking panels off a car is never fun and is always a two-man job, or definitely made easier anyway by being a two-man job. So yeah, shouts out to him for helping us out. So the Aston is now fully stripped back and we can see the extent of the damage in its full entirety, and the only bit which is really stopping us from putting it back together now is this bar that goes across here. As you can see, this side is how it's supposed to look, and this is how the other side is looking, which isn't ideal. And here is the piece which is supposed to be here, and you can see that even just welding that back on isn't going to be good enough because it's bent, and I think it's going to be a bit of a nightmare to try and straighten this out, but I thought this was my only option until I found out that you can buy this. So that is a brand new replacement piece which we can now rivet in, and it will be as good as new and be how it should be. So now it's time to drill out all of these rivets, pull out the old broken one, and try and rivet in that new piece. So before removing this bar, I'm not even sure of the technical name of it, to be honest with you, but that's what we're going to call it. I had to unbolt everything that could be unbolted so we could then start looking at taking off the rivets and removing it from the car. So we had our favourite fabricator Martin round to do this for us. So he uses a punch to punch out the centre of the rivet and then drill out what's left, and then there's just a bit of bonding holding on this bar to the ones next to it. So fairly easy then to break off what's left and get it off the car.
Talking about.
My luck, honestly, it never fails to amaze me. I am sometimes the most unlucky person in the world. Let me show you why. So even though I have bought the correct part for my Aston Martin Vantage, and it's a genuine AML Aston Martin Lagonda part, and it looks legit, it looks the one, and that's because it is, but there is a problem. As always, my luck has ran dry again, and you see these little inserts that we've got here? These are an opposite thread which then take a insert. Let me show you. So these are an opposite thread insert which goes into these holes here, which then means that you can thread in the bolt for the headlight. So in some of these holes, this does fit absolutely perfectly, not a problem at all, like this one here. But unfortunately, some of the holes are off center and just haven't quite been put in right, so you cannot thread the insert in place, which means this part is no good. And there is something else a little bit stupid which I've done, but I'll come back to that in a minute. There's one more part we need to fit. So I think I mentioned in the previous video that this air intake pipe and kind of MAF housing has a very slight crack in it just here. So that is going to be no good. We need to get that changed before we can start looking at getting our air filters and things on. So that shouldn't take long at all. I've already got the MAF sensor plug out. I just need to take this clamp off. So again, a super easy little job, and if I mess this one up then God knows what's going on, but it's just a little plastic clamp which holds this in place. Then we can swap the MAF sensor over from the broken pipe into the new one, and then it's just a case of pushing the pipe back into place and then squeezing that clamp on, and it's good to go. Well, at least I can get a simple little job like that right, thank God. But let me tell you about my fuck up now. So earlier in the video, or last week in real time, I fitted this inner tie rod and track rod end, and it was all seeming fine, but then I realised that this is poking out a lot more thread here than what it is on the passenger side here, and then I realised that when I took off the track rod end on this side, there was a little metal cone insert sort of thing. I thought that was just the track rod end being buggered and the rubber having ripped off it or something, but I think what I've gone and done is chucked away the insert which sits inside the hub and then essentially makes this sit right. So that means I need to now try and find that piece, which I know no one is going to want to sell me. I will put money on that a breaker will only want to sell me a full upright, so a new hub, suspensions, arms, everything like that, and I just need that tiny little metal piece, which is super frustrating. And I haven't chucked anything from the car away apart from that inner tie rod and track rod end, which means I could have saved it if I'd used my noggin, which I obviously haven't. So yeah, that is frustrating. But I'm sure it's not going to be a problem. I'm sure we'll get through it. I'm sure someone off this video or someone can help me out. I can find that little piece and we can get it all working properly. But for now anyway, I think we've had a pretty productive video, and in the next video I'm going to be showing you something which I've bought for the car, which is going to be absolutely epic, and I've spent a fortune, but it's going to turn this from looking like a nice car into something next level, and you guys are not ready for this. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I will catch you next time.